15 years? That's how long I've been cooking every holiday meal for my family. 15 years of peeling potatoes, basting turkeys, carrying trays, scrubbing pans. And do you know what those 15 years left behind? Not a single photograph of me. Not one frame where I'm smiling at the table. Not one candid where I'm clinking glasses with everyone else. Every album we've put together, it's like I never existed. Think about that for a second. Imagine scrolling through a decade and a half of family videos and realizing you've become a ghost in your own story. Wouldn't that sting? Wouldn't you wonder if your presence ever mattered? I remember the first time it hit me. My cousin had posted a collage on Facebook, best moments of the holidays. Everyone was there, my mom laughing, my dad carving the turkey, my sister holding up a glass of wine. And where was I? Nowhere. I was probably the one holding the platter of stuffing just outside the frame, or maybe kneeling by the oven timer that never seemed to stop buzzing. That night, I pulled out the thick family album my mom keeps on the living room shelf. I flipped page after page, and my stomach sank lower with each one. Dozens of smiling faces, years of celebrations, new babies, engagements, Christmas mornings with ripped wrapping paper scattered across the floor. And me? Maybe a blurry elbow in the corner, a strand of hair that snuck into the edge of the shot, an empty chair where I should have been sitting. Have you ever looked at your own life and realized you're missing from it? It's not that I wasn't there. I was there more than anyone, because I made it possible. But being present doesn't mean being seen. That's the difference. That's the wound. And here's the thing. I know I'm not the only one. Maybe it's you. Maybe you've been the one behind the camera at every birthday, never once in the frame. Or the one who always organizes the work party but never enjoys a slice of cake because you're still cleaning up. You pour yourself out until there's nothing left. And when you look back, there's no proof you were even part of the joy. People like to joke, if there's no picture, did it even happen? And I laugh on the outside, but inside I want to scream. Because if there's no picture, then for me, maybe it didn't. Maybe my role was never about living those moments. Maybe I was just the support beam no one notices until it's gone. That emptiness doesn't just show up in albums. It creeps into your chest. You start doubting your worth. You wonder if the only thing people value is what you provide, not who you are. It's a lonely thought. And once it's lodged in your mind, it grows louder every time another holiday rolls around. I can still smell the rosemary from last Thanksgiving, the way it clung to my sweater long after everyone had left. The kitchen was chaos, pots boiling, timers shrieking, smoke alarms threatening to go off. And yet the living room was calm, glowing with laughter. They clinked glasses, they snapped selfies, they played charades. I kept peeking in, hoping maybe someone would notice, maybe call me over for a quick picture, but nobody did. The moment passed. The photos were uploaded, and once again I was absent. Do you know how painful it is to feel erased? To feel like your memories don't match the evidence? You say to yourself, I was there. I felt the joy. I carried the weight of it. But when you search for proof, you find nothing but shadows and smudges. That's why I'm telling you this story now. Because sometimes the only way to reclaim your existence is to speak it out loud. To look you in the eye, yes, you, and ask, have you ever disappeared in your own family's history? Have you ever realized the seat where you should have been is just empty? I want you to sit with that question, because that's where my story begins. Every holiday blurred into the same scene for me. The clatter of pots, the smell of garlic sautéing, the timer buzzing like it owned me. Thanksgiving, Christmas, my mom's birthday. It didn't matter. If there was a gathering, I was the one in the kitchen always. Picture this. The front door swings open. Relatives spill inside with laughter, cheeks red from the cold. Coats fly onto the rack. Hugs get exchanged. Meanwhile, I'm already in an apron, wrist deep in dough or bent over a roasting pan. By the time I step out to greet anyone, the conversations are in full swing. I'm the background noise, the hum that keeps everything running. Do you know what that feels like? To watch people celebrate while you're chained to the stove? One Christmas stands out. Madison, my younger sister, walked into the kitchen, saw me stirring gravy with sweat running down my forehead. She smirked and said, "You're basically the server here." Just like that, a throwaway line. But it landed like a punch, because she wasn't wrong. I had become the server. The invisible worker who made joy possible but never got to taste it. Flashback to my mom's birthday a few years earlier. Everyone sang, "Happy birthday," candles glowing, my mom's eyes watering with happiness. They cut the cake, forks clinking. I was in the sink, wrists deep in suds, listening to muffled laughter through the wall. When I finally peeked in, the plates were scraped clean. No one noticed I wasn't there. My slice sat untouched, the frosting melting under the heat of the candles long blown out. That's when the realization sank in. I wasn't part of the memory. I was the worker behind it. It's not that I hated cooking. At first I loved it. I thought making meals was my way of showing love. But over the years, love turned into expectation. Expectation hardened into obligation. And obligation? Obligation erases you. Think about your own life. Have you ever been typecast into a role you didn't choose? Always the responsible one, always the fixer, always the one who makes sure everyone else shines? That was me, holiday after holiday. The cruel part is that no one even noticed. My family wasn't malicious. They were just comfortable. Comfort makes people blind. They saw the food appear, the dishes vanish, the table sparkle, and they never stopped to ask who made it all happen. Or maybe they did know. Maybe they just assumed that's who I was meant to be. The irony? When relatives told stories later, they always said, "We had the best meal." Not, "Hannah cooked her heart out." Just, the best meal. As if the food made itself. As if I was some kind of appliance tucked away in the kitchen, faceless and voiceless. And each time, the message dug deeper. You are what you provide, not who you are. I remember standing in the doorway one Thanksgiving, watching them laugh over a board game. My apron was stained, my hair tied back, my hands still wet from rinsing dishes. I thought, I want to sit there. I want to laugh too. But instead, I turned back into the kitchen. The sound of their laughter faded, replaced by the hiss of the oven. That contrast, the warmth out there, the loneliness in here, burned itself into me. So when Madison called me the server, I laughed on the outside. What else could I do? But inside I cracked. It was the kind of crack you don't hear until it's too late. And here's where I want to pause and ask you, have you ever been reduced to just a role? Have you ever realized people love what you do for them more than they love you? That's why this part of my story hurts the most. Because it's not about missing a photo or an empty chair. It's about being erased from the very memories I helped create. If you've ever felt that, then you already know the sting. And if you haven't, look closer. Look at the person always working behind the scenes in your life. Maybe they're carrying more than you realize. It started with a cough. A small one at first, then one that rattled my chest like a loose door hinge. By the time Thanksgiving week rolled around, I was feverish, achy, and wrapped in blankets. But there was no question in anyone's mind. I was still the one expected to cook. "Don't forget the turkeys in the fridge," Mom reminded me on the phone, her voice casual. "I'm sick, Mom," I whispered. But she didn't hear it, or maybe she didn't want to. So on that Thursday, while everyone else arrived in sweaters and scarves, carrying wine bottles and laughter, I dragged myself into the kitchen. My head pounded with every clatter of the pan. My skin felt too hot for my body, but I kept moving, peeling potatoes, basting the turkey, checking timers, because that's what I always did. You ever hit that point where your body begs you to stop, but your history pushes you forward? That's where I was. 15 years of conditioning, of she'll handle it, chained me to the stove. I tried to smile when people wandered in. Madison popped her head through the doorway. "You look awful," she said, wrinkling her nose. "But hurry up, we're starving." She laughed, but it wasn't funny, not to me. The room spun as I stirred the gravy. My throat burned with unsaid words, and suddenly, something inside me snapped. I dropped the spoon. It clattered against the counter, splattering gravy across my sweater. My voice came out louder than I expected, shaky but fierce. "No, I can't do this anymore." The kitchen fell silent. Madison blinked, startled. My dad wandered in, frowning. "What's going on?" "I'm not your cook," I said, tears mixing with sweat on my cheeks. "I'm sick. I'm tired. I've been invisible for 15 years, and I'm done." For a second, no one spoke. Then the eruption came. "You're overreacting," Dad snapped. "You always make it about you," Madison hissed. Mom, arms crossed, muttered, "You could have said something earlier instead of ruining the holiday." Their words hit me harder than the fever. My chest ached with more than illness. It ached with betrayal. Because I wasn't ruining the holiday. I was trying to save myself. Have you ever said no for the first time in your life, and instead of compassion, you got backlash? That's exactly what it felt like. Like I'd committed some unforgivable sin by refusing to break my body for their comfort. I cried openly, my voice trembling but steadying with every word. "I want to sit at the table. I want to be part of this family, not just the one feeding it." The silence that followed was heavy, sharp. You could cut it with a knife. They stared at me like I'd grown 2 heads, and in that moment, I realized the truth. Saying no doesn't just free you, it scares the people who benefit from your yes. That night ended in slammed doors and muttered insults. The food sat half-prepared on the counter. Nobody wanted to touch it. And me? I crawled into bed, body shivering, heart racing, wondering if I'd just fractured the very foundation of my family. But I also felt something else under the fever, under the fear, relief. For once, I had chosen myself. And maybe you've been there too. Maybe you finally said no to a boss, a partner, a family that took you for granted, and felt the storm hit. It's terrifying, it's messy, but it's also the first breath of freedom. That was my moment. The moment I said no. And it changed everything. The day after I said no felt like walking through smoke. No one looked at me the same. My mom's eyes were cold. Madison avoided me. Dad muttered something about ungrateful. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd pull it together without me. Maybe they'd prove me wrong and show they didn't need me chained to that stove. Thanksgiving dinner was still on. Everyone arrived as planned. The doorbell rang, coats piled on the banister, cousins and uncles filled the living room with chatter. But something was different. The kitchen wasn't humming with the steady rhythm of preparation. No aroma of butter, herbs, or roasted turkey filled the air. Instead, it smelled faintly of panic. I watched from the couch. Madison wrestled with the turkey, pulling it out of the oven too early, then shoving it back in when she realized the inside was still raw. The oven door slammed. The smoke alarm wailed. Everyone jumped. Someone fanned the air with a dish towel. I couldn't help but press my hand to my mouth, half in horror, half in disbelief. You know that nervous laughter that escapes when disaster unfolds in front of you? That's what it sounded like around the kitchen. My mom stirred the gravy, too much flour clumping in her whisk. It thickened into something closer to cement than sauce. She cursed under her breath, cheeks red with embarrassment, plates clattered. Side dishes turned out uneven, cold on the edges, scorched in the middle. The stuffing was so salty it made one cousin gag dramatically, sending the younger kids into fits of giggles. And me? For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't breaking my back. I sat at the table, not hovering by the stove, not running to refill glasses. I sat down, fork in hand, like an actual guest at my own family's holiday. The food was chaos, but the moment was priceless. Someone snapped a photo. For once I wasn't missing. I wasn't cropped out or left in the kitchen, unseen. There I was, in full view, seated at the table. The invisible cook had become visible. Do you know what it feels like to finally exist in your own story? To stop being background noise and start being seen? That's what hit me as the flash went off. The turkey was charred, the potatoes lumpy, but none of it mattered because I was there. The room buzzed with complaints. This is inedible. Why didn't Hannah just do it? But I tuned it out. I sipped my drink slowly, letting the glass cool against my palm. Their chaos was no longer my chaos. And maybe that's the funny part. Sometimes the only way people learn is through the mess. Through burnt turkeys and ruined gravy, through sitting in their own discomfort. That night I went to bed lighter. For once, I didn't smell like onions and grease. My hair didn't reek of smoke. My body didn't ache from hours of standing. I lay under the covers and smiled. Small, tired, but real. Because finally, I was at the table. Finally, I had a seat in my own family's memory. And if you've ever felt erased, if you've ever longed to be seen in the pictures of your life, maybe this is your reminder. You deserve a seat too. Don't wait for permission. Take it. The house was still carrying the scent of burned turkey when I opened my phone. I scrolled through the photos people had taken, the one where I finally sat at the table. But instead of feeling proud, I felt something boiling inside me. 15 years of silence had piled up in my chest, and now the world needed to know. I opened the TikTok app. My fingers hovered over the screen. My heart pounded like I was about to step on stage. Do I really want to do this? I asked myself. But then I thought of every Thanksgiving I'd missed being in photos. Every Christmas where I heard laughter from the dining room while I stood over the sink. Every birthday where the cake was enjoyed by everyone else, but I was stuck washing pans, so I pressed record. The camera caught me in my kitchen, tired eyes, messy hair, no makeup, raw, real. For 15 years, I began. I cooked for my whole family. But if you flip through our albums, it's like I never existed. I'm invisible. Just the hands making the food, never the face in the pictures. I didn't plan a script. I just let the words fall out, heavy, unpolished. This Thanksgiving I said no. And let me tell you, it wasn't pretty. They called me selfish. They said I ruined the holiday. But I didn't ruin it. I finally sat at the table. When I hit post, I thought maybe a few people would see it. Maybe 10, maybe 20. I went to bed with my phone face down. By morning, my notifications were on fire. The video had hit 100,000 views overnight. By lunch, it was 1 million. Comments poured in like a flood. I feel this in my soul. My mom was the invisible cook too. Girl, you are speaking for all of us. I sat on the edge of my bed, stunned. It wasn't just my story. It was ours. Thousands of women, daughters, sisters, even sons, writing that they had lived the same invisibility. Some said they cried watching me. Others said they finally felt seen. But not everyone celebrated. At dinner that night, my phone kept buzzing. Madison snatched it from my hand and read the comments aloud with a sneer. "You made us look pathetic," she hissed. "You turned our family drama into entertainment." My mom shook her head, her face tight with worry. "Do you know what people will think of us?" "Take it down, Hannah. Take it down right now." The air was thick with judgment. My dad muttered something about airing dirty laundry. Madison slammed her fork against the table, the sound sharp. "Delete it, or you'll regret it." But how could I? For the first time, people saw me. Not just my cooking. Not just the back of my head in a blurry photo. Me. I looked at Madison and whispered, Why are you mad at me for telling the truth? If you were proud of how you treated me, you wouldn't care if the world knew. Silence. Their faces told me everything. They weren't angry because I lied. They were angry because I told the truth. Have you ever had that moment when your truth scares the people who've kept you quiet? That's where I was, torn between their shame and my freedom. My phone buzzed again. Another comment popped up. You're brave. Don't stop talking. And maybe that's what this was really about. Not just a video, not just TikTok. It was a shift from invisible to visible, from silenced to amplified. I stared at my family, my voice steady. I'm not taking it down. That sentence cracked the air like thunder. My mom's spoon clattered to the plate. Madison's eyes narrowed. The tension was unbearable, but under it, I felt something else. Power. Because for the first time, I wasn't asking to be seen, I was demanding it. And if you've ever hidden your pain to protect others, maybe you understand this. Your story matters, and sometimes sharing it is the only way to break free. I'll never forget the night my family staged what felt like a corporate showdown in our own living room. The air was heavy, like we were about to sign contracts, not eat dessert. The curtains were drawn, the lights dimmed, and every seat on the couch was filled as if they had been waiting for me. Madison sat with her arms crossed, eyes sharp, like she was the lawyer in charge. My parents flanked her, silent but stern. I was the only one standing. It started with my dad clearing his throat. We need to talk. His voice wasn't soft. It was the kind of tone you use when an employee's about to be fired. Madison jumped in. This TikTok nonsense has gone too far. Either you take it down, or... She leaned forward. You're out. Out, the word echoed. Out of what? Out of the house? Out of the family? Out of the history I'd already been erased from? I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Do you hear yourselves? You're treating me like some liability you can cut off your books. My mom leaned in, her voice trembling. You're making us look bad, Hannah. People in town are talking, at church, at work. This family doesn't air its dirty laundry. Dirty laundry, that phrase again. Why is it always called that when the truth comes out? I fired back. It's not laundry, it's my life. And if you're embarrassed, maybe it's because you know it's true. The room went still. Madison's face reddened. She slammed her hand against the armrest. This isn't about you, it's about us. About how you're ruining our reputation, I wanted to scream. You think reputation is more important than me existing in my own family? For a moment, no one answered. The silence was suffocating. My heart pounded so loud I swear it filled the room. And then, my phone buzzed. I glanced down. An email notification. It was from the local newspaper. Subject line, we'd like to interview you about your viral TikTok. My breath caught. Of all moments, of all nights, this invitation appeared right then. In the middle of my so-called trial, I looked up. Do you know what that was? A reporter wants me to share my story. Not just in a 30-second video, but in print, in depth. Their faces twisted in horror. My dad muttered, absolutely not. Madison spat. If you say yes, you're dead to us. Dead to us. Out, laundry, reputation. Do you hear the language of control? I took a deep breath. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. You've erased me for 15 years. And now that I've found my voice, you want to erase me again? No. Madison shot up, pointing a finger at me. Delete it, Hannah, end this circus, or you're gone. I asked quietly, gone from where? From the family I was never allowed to truly be part of? From photos I was never in? From stories where my name was never mentioned? Silence again, and then I said the words that broke it all apart. I'm not erasing myself anymore. It felt like fire, like freedom, like stepping out from under a shadow. The room erupted. My mom sobbed. My dad shook his head in disbelief. Madison stormed down the hall and slammed a door so hard the walls rattled. But me? I just stood there, holding my phone like it was a shield. Because it was. That screen, that story, that truth, it was mine, and I wasn't giving it back. So I typed my reply to the reporter, yes, I'd be honored to share my story. And in that moment, I knew I had crossed a line I could never uncross. Have you ever felt that? That instant you realize the cost of being silent is heavier than the cost of speaking up? That's where I was, terrified, but also alive. The day of the interview, I woke up with my stomach in knots. My hands shook as I buttoned my shirt, and for a second, I almost convinced myself not to go. Who was I to speak for anyone but myself? Who was I to think people would care? But then I remembered that empty chair in the family photos. I remembered years of Thanksgiving steam sticking to my skin while laughter happened on the other side of the door. That memory pushed me out the door. The reporter's office was nothing glamorous. A coffee machine gurgled in the corner. The floor smelled faintly of ink and paper, and there was a desk stacked high with sticky notes. She smiled at me like she'd been waiting her whole career for this story. "Hannah," she said, "your TikTok struck a nerve. Millions of people saw it." "Why do you think it resonated?" I swallowed hard. Because it wasn't just about me. It was about anyone who's ever been invisible in their own home. The words poured out faster than I expected. I told her about the birthdays I cooked through, the Christmas mornings where the sound of wrapping paper never reached me, the flu I fought while stirring gravy. I told her how being absent from pictures was like being absent from the record of my family's history. At one point, she leaned forward, recorder clicking softly. "So I go public. Because silence is the glue that holds unfairness together," I said. And I couldn't be silent anymore. When the article came out, it spread faster than I ever imagined. Headlines picked it up. The invisible cook who finally said no. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages filled my inbox, not just from strangers, but from women in different states, different countries, different generations. Some were moms, some daughters, some wives, all of them saying the same thing. "That's me. I've lived that too." Reading those comments felt like hearing a choir I'd never known existed. Voices layered and loud, finally drowning out the silence I'd carried. And then something I never thought I'd see happened. My family read the article. For 2 days, no one spoke to me. I braced for the storm, the slammed doors, the accusations. But instead, one evening, my mom knocked on my door. She held nothing in her hands. Not a plate, not a demand, just herself. She whispered, "I didn't realize how much I erased you." Her eyes glistened. I thought keeping the traditions alive was love. But I see now it came at your expense. It wasn't an apology wrapped in perfection. It wasn't magic. But it was the start of something. A week later, when we gathered again, this time for my cousin's birthday, the kitchen didn't sound like a battlefield. My dad tried whisking the mashed potatoes. Madison burned a tray of brownies and laughed instead of blaming me. And for the first time in 15 years, I carried nothing but my own plate to the table. When the camera came out, my aunt raised her phone and said, "Smile." And there I was, sitting in the middle, not hidden behind steam or shadow. Just me, in the picture, finally. Do you know what that felt like? Like reclaiming proof of existence. Like saying, "Here I am, I belong." And that's why I'm sharing this with you, because maybe you've been the invisible one too. Maybe you've been the default caretaker, the peacemaker, the one holding the weight so others could float free. If that's you, I want you to hear me now. Your story matters. Your voice matters. Setting boundaries is terrifying. Speaking up feels like betrayal. But silence is the bigger betrayal, the one you commit against yourself. So if you've ever drawn that line, or if you're standing at the edge of it right now, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment. Share your story. Because when we speak, we remind each other we're not alone. And when we speak together, we're impossible to erase. When my video first blew up, I thought it would only bring light. I thought it would be a kind of freedom, like opening a window in a stuffy room. For a while, it was exactly that. Thousands of strangers from across the world wrote to me saying, "You put words to my life." Women from Texas, from Toronto, from little towns in England. Their words felt like a chorus, echoing what I had whispered to myself for years. But here's what I didn't see coming. Alongside the love came shadows. Comments that cut like little knives. Why are you airing your family's dirty laundry? Ungrateful, attention seeker. And worse, people questioning whether I had even cooked those meals, whether I was exaggerating, whether I was lying. It's strange how words on a screen can burn hotter than fire. You scroll, you try to brush it off, but one nasty comment can sink deeper than 100 kind ones. I'd sit at night, the glow of my phone lighting up my face, scrolling through the chaos. One moment my heart swelled with pride, the next I felt my stomach twist with doubt. And it wasn't just strangers, it was people closer than that. A cousin texted me, "You made us look bad." An aunt sent a long Facebook message about respect and family loyalty. Even a neighbor gave me that polite smile that wasn't polite at all. Inside the house, it got worse. Madison stormed into my room one evening, her cheeks flushed red. "You think you're some kind of hero?" she spat. I tried to answer calmly. "I just told the truth." Her voice cracked, sharp as glass. "You humiliated us." Humiliation. That word hung in the air, as if my pain was less important than the family's reputation. As if silence would have been easier for everyone but me. And Mom? Mom's silence hurt most of all. She didn't yell. She didn't even argue. She just sat at the kitchen table, lips pressed tight, her eyes not meeting mine. That silence was heavier than any scream. I'd lock myself in my room, replaying it all in my head. The warmth of strangers, the coldness of family, the confusion of being celebrated and condemned at the same time. How do you hold both? How do you balance being seen for the first time with being punished for the same act? One night, I caught myself whispering out loud, "Was it worth it?" And then I thought of the 15 years, the countless hours in the kitchen, the smell of onions on my hands, the grease stains on my apron, the laughter echoing from the dining room while I scraped burnt bits off pans alone. Was that worth it? Was silence worth it? The truth hit me. Every choice has a price. Speaking up doesn't erase the cost. It just changes who pays it. For once, I wasn't the only one carrying the burden. Still, the weight was real. Walking into the grocery store, I felt eyes on me. At church, whispers swirled behind me. Even scrolling TikTok, I could see my own face stitched into videos of strangers debating me, analyzing me like I was some case study. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight. I'd wanted visibility, but this was exposure. It felt raw, vulnerable, like I'd stripped off armor I didn't even know I had. But then a message came. A woman wrote, "My daughter watched your video. She told me she doesn't want to grow up invisible. Thank you." I stared at that line for a long time. Invisible, the very word that had haunted me. If my story gave one girl the courage to say, "I deserve to be seen," maybe the cost was worth it. You know, people talk about bravery like it's shiny, like it's applause and medals and everyone cheering for you. But bravery, the kind I tasted, was messy. It was tears on my pillow. It was my sister slamming the door. It was Mom's silence. It was fear. And still, it was stepping forward anyway. So yeah, speaking up has a price. And I'm paying it every single day. in strained glances across the dinner table, in awkward run-ins at the store, in my own late-night doubts. But let me ask you, what's the cost of never speaking? What's the price of swallowing every word, year after year, until you don't even recognize your own reflection? I chose my cost. And maybe, just maybe, it's buying me something silence never could. A chance at being whole. I'll never forget the morning it shifted. The morning when the voices of strangers, voices I had never heard before, became louder than the whispers of my family. I woke up to hundreds of notifications. At first, I braced myself. More criticism, maybe? But instead, what I saw stopped me cold. People had started stitching my video. Women standing in their kitchens, aprons tied around their waists, saying, "This is me. This is my story too." Fathers admitting, "I never realized my wife was missing from all our photos. Thank you for opening my eyes." One video in particular made me cry right there in bed. A young girl, maybe 16, looking straight at the camera. "I don't want to be invisible like my mom. Thank you for showing me it's okay to speak up." Her voice shook, but her eyes burned with courage. I felt like I was watching a mirror of my younger self, except she had the words I never dared to say at her age. Then came the duets. People holding up empty chairs at their dining tables, posting pictures of their family albums with captions, "Notice who's missing." A hashtag started trending, #, no more invisible moms. And just like that, it wasn't just my story anymore, it was ours. Of course, my family hated it. Madison rolled her eyes every time she heard the word viral. Mom muttered about outsiders meddling in private business. But outside our walls, I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't just the girl in the kitchen. I was part of something bigger. The first time I walked into the grocery store after the hashtag blew up, I expected stares, maybe snide comments. Instead, a woman touched my arm softly. "You're Hannah, right? I just want to say, thank you." Her eyes shimmered like she was about to cry, and I didn't know what to do except nod, my own throat too tight to speak. Soon after, letters started arriving at our house, handwritten ones, not just emails. A grandmother from Ohio, a nurse from Manchester, a single dad from Vancouver. They all said the same thing in different words. "We see you. We're with you." That's when the fear began to loosen its grip. Because no matter how harsh Madison's words, no matter how cold Mom's silence, I knew there was a world out there saying, "We believe you." And honestly, that gave me strength I didn't know I had. It made the next confrontation in my living room a little less terrifying. It made the late-night comments sting a little less. Community is a strange thing, isn't it? Sometimes the people under your own roof don't hear you. But strangers across oceans can make you feel like you finally exist. Do you know that feeling? The first time someone you've never met says exactly what your heart needed to hear? That's what kept me going. That's what turned my story from a lonely cry into a chorus. And if you're watching this, wondering if your story matters, let me tell you, it does. Your words might be the ones someone else is waiting for, the way I didn't know the world was waiting for mine. The community didn't just stand behind me, they lifted me. And once you've been lifted like that, you realize you can't go back to silence. There's a picture that hangs in our hallway now, not one of the old ones where I'm missing, not one where I'm blurred in the background, holding a plate or balancing a casserole dish. No, this one is different. It happened on a Sunday. Not a holiday, not a birthday, just a Sunday. The air was cool, and sunlight spilled through the kitchen window like it wanted to be part of what was about to happen. For the first time, the cooking wasn't mine. Madison had taken charge of the main dish, fumbling with the timer, laughing at herself when she forgot the salt. Mom chopped vegetables at the counter, slow, deliberate, as if she was making up for years of avoiding that space. Even Dad hovered around the stove, trying to help, which usually meant he was in the way. But this time, nobody complained. I sat at the table. Not standing, not rushing, not invisible, just sitting. And then Madison said something I never thought I'd hear from her lips. "Hey, Hannah, can you set the camera? We should take a picture. Like, all of us." I froze. You know that lump in your throat when your body doesn't know if it should laugh or cry? That was me. For years, my absence from those pictures had been normal, expected. But here was my sister, the same one who once called me the servant, asking me to be in the frame. I set the camera on the counter, adjusted the angle, and when the timer started blinking, I hurried back to the table. For a second, I worried I'd mess it up, that somehow I'd slip back into the role of the background. But then I felt Mom's hand reach for mine. Madison's shoulder pressed against mine. Dad cracked a joke about his double chin, and the room filled with laughter. The shutter clicked. And just like that, history shifted. Later that night, I looked at the photo. There I was, centered, not cropped out, not holding a tray. Just me, laughing. My eyes crinkled in a way I didn't even recognize because I'd never seen it captured before. I realized something then. The photo wasn't perfect. The table was messy, Madison's hair was sticking out, and Dad's shirt had a stain on it. But that imperfection made it real, and for once, I was in the reality too. It made me think, how many of us go through life missing from our own story? How many photos are missing the person who did all the work behind the scenes? That picture in the hallway? It's not just a family portrait. It's proof. Proof that I exist, that I belong, that my voice didn't just change the world outside, but the one inside these walls too. I guess that's the real victory. Not the views, not the trending hashtag, not even the interview. It's this. A new picture where I'm finally seen. And maybe that's what I want to leave you with. If you've been missing from your own story, if the albums of your life feel incomplete, maybe it's time to step into the frame. Not tomorrow, not someday, today. Because you deserve to be remembered. You deserve to be seen. So here's my question for you. What will your new picture look like? I don't think I realized it back then. When you're a teenager, disappearing feels normal, almost expected. Everyone's trying to fit in, trying to hide something. But when I look back now, it's like my whole adolescence was a training ground for being invisible. I remember high school dances. Everyone in glitter dresses, neon lights bouncing off their faces. Photos everywhere, disposable cameras, flashes like tiny fireworks. And me? I was always on the edge, holding the jackets, watching the purses. I'd tell myself, someone has to do it. Someone has to be the safe spot, the one who waits. I'd stand there by the gym wall while everyone else danced, and nobody noticed that I never stepped into the frame. Do you know what it feels like to be present, but not remembered? It's like shouting into a canyon, but instead of an echo, you get silence. By the time I hit 16, I had dreams, big ones. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to study journalism. I pictured myself carrying a notebook everywhere, scribbling down people's stories. But at home, the stories were already written for me. I was the reliable one, the helper, the one who covered chores, the one who set the table when Mom worked late, the one who made sure Madison had something to eat before soccer. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself, college will be my escape. But then college tours came, and I remember Mom saying, "You can't just leave. Who's going to take care of us?" And I nodded, like I always did. There's this one flashback that comes to me often, senior year, awards night. Madison was on stage, winning something for athletics. Mom was clapping, crying tears of pride. I was standing right behind her, holding her coat and purse. I wanted to cheer too. I wanted to shout Madison's name. But then Mom turned just for a second and whispered, "Don't forget to start dinner when we get home." That moment stuck like a thorn. Even in the middle of Madison's victory, my role was to serve, not to shine, not even to share the spotlight. Just to keep the house machine running? And you know what's wild? I accepted it. I didn't fight. I buried my notebook in a drawer. I told myself that writing was selfish, that what really mattered was making sure everyone else was okay. Have you ever scrolled through old Facebook albums? Those grainy pictures from the early 2000s? My friends post throwbacks all the time. Homecoming, road trips, silly sleepovers. When I scroll through mine, it feels like I never lived them. I was there, I know I was there, but the lens never turned toward me. One photo haunts me. Madison's birthday party, 2009. She's blowing out candles surrounded by balloons. Her friends are leaning in, laughing. The shot is perfect, colorful, joyful, memorable. And then in the corner, in the blurry background, you can just make out my hands. My hands holding the cake tray, cropped, unfocused, like proof that I existed, but not enough to matter. That's how my teen years feel. A series of blurry corners where I was present, but not seen. Sometimes I wonder if I trained myself to vanish. Like maybe I got so used to being background that I stopped trying to be foreground. I stopped raising my hand in class. I stopped asking friends to take pictures with me. I stopped auditioning for plays, even though I loved theater. I stopped saying, "Look at me," because it felt safer not to. Invisibility became my armor. If I wasn't seen, I couldn't be judged. If I wasn't remembered, I couldn't be rejected. And yet, every time a flash went off, a tiny part of me whispered, "Please, just this once, don't forget me." Fast forward to now, telling you this story. I can trace the lines, I can see the pattern. 15 years of being the cook, the helper, the background voice. It didn't just start in adulthood. It started the moment I let myself disappear as a teenager. And maybe that's the real heartbreak. Not that others erased me, but that I learned to erase myself. I'm sharing this because I know some of you feel it too. Maybe you were the friend who always held the camera. Maybe you were the sibling who always cleaned up after the party. Maybe you were the one people vented to but never invited out, the steady one, the dependable one, the invisible one. And I want you to hear me when I say your story matters. Your face deserves to be in the frame. Your voice deserves to be recorded. You don't need to vanish to earn love. I think about my teenage self sometimes. The girl with ink-stained fingers from scribbling stories in the dark. I want to reach back through time and tell her, don't put that notebook away. Don't bury your light. They may not notice you now, but one day your words will matter because here I am, talking to you. And you're listening. Proof that the invisible girl didn't disappear completely. That's the hidden cost of vanishing. You don't just miss the photos, you miss yourself. But the beautiful part? You can choose to step back into the frame at any age, at any moment. So let me ask you, have you ever felt yourself fading out of your own story? And if so, what would it take for you to step back in? When my video first went viral, I thought it would fade in a week. You know how the internet is, fast, loud, and forgetful. But instead of dying down, the comments grew. They multiplied. Thousands turned into tens of thousands. And with every notification, I realized something I'd never expected. I wasn't alone. The echo began with a simple line. One woman wrote, "I thought I was the only invisible one." And then another. 15 years for me too, Hannah. 15 years in the kitchen. My phone buzzed at midnight, at dawn, in the middle of work calls. Each buzz carried someone's story. Each buzz carried a ghost of another kitchen. There was Maria from Texas. She sent me a picture. Her family gathered at a barbecue, plates piled high, faces smiling. She circled the edge of the photo where she was half turned, spatula still in hand. Her caption read, "This is the closest I've ever been to a family picture. Then came Aisha from London. She told me about cooking Eid feasts for 20 cousins while everyone else danced and sang. Her memories weren't of laughter under lanterns, but of standing over a hot stove while the songs muffled through the door. She ended her message with, "When you spoke, I felt seen for the first time." I couldn't stop reading. There were men too, quiet fathers, older brothers, partners who played the role of background caretaker. One wrote, "They only noticed me when the turkey was dry." Another admitted, "I didn't know I could say no. You gave me permission." And then there were the daughters, teenagers, even younger than I was when I started vanishing. Girls confessing they hated birthdays because they were the ones inflating balloons, cleaning icing off the table, washing plates while their siblings posed with cake. I read those messages and my heart twisted, because it was like watching my own shadow repeat in someone else's life. The sheer weight of it shook me. At first, I cried. I'd sit on the couch, scrolling through paragraphs of strangers' pain, and tears just came. Because every story was a mirror, and each mirror showed a different angle of my own erasure. But then something shifted. The more I read, the less alone I felt. Their echoes became a chorus, and in that chorus, I heard strength. It wasn't just my battle anymore, it was ours. I remember one night vividly. I was scrolling when I saw a video reply. A woman, maybe in her 40s, standing in her kitchen with an apron still on. She looked straight into the camera and said, "I saw Hannah's story. Today, I sat down at the table. I didn't serve. I ate first. And guess what? The world didn't end," I gasped. It was such a small act, but it felt revolutionary. I replayed it 3 times, her smile growing wider at the end. That was the proof. Change was possible. More videos followed. Hashtags started trending. # seat at the table. # no more invisible moms. # my kitchen too. People showed clips of themselves putting down the ladle and picking up a chair. Husbands filming wives laughing at the table for once. Kids pulling their moms into selfies instead of leaving them behind the camera. I was stunned. It was like watching a quiet rebellion spread from one home to another, a domino effect. One kitchen after another, women stepping back into the frame. Of course, not every message was supportive. Some people scoffed, called it complaining, said, "It's just tradition." I won't lie, those words stung. But then I'd read the next dozen comments, filled with love, with fire, with women refusing to go silent anymore. And I realized the backlash only meant the truth was hitting hard. I started saving the stories, copying them into a folder, labeling them by country. I wanted to hold them close, to remind myself this wasn't just noise on a screen. This was history in real time, and the echo was global. Sometimes I'd close my eyes and imagine it. The sound of kitchens all over the world, pots clattering, ovens humming, and then the silence as women stepped away from the stove, sat down, and let themselves be seen. That silence wasn't emptiness, it was power. The wildest part? Some families began reaching out too. Husbands apologizing, brothers admitting guilt. Even a few mothers writing, "I did this to my daughters. I kept them in the kitchen with me, and I regret it. I want to change." Those broke me open, because invisibility is a cycle, passed down like an heirloom. And here it was, finally being questioned. Have you ever felt a community form around you, even if you've never met? It's electric. You can't touch it, but you can feel it in your bones. That's what happened here. Every story wasn't just a reflection, it was fuel. And the more echoes I heard, the louder my own voice grew. Because for the first time, I knew this wasn't a private wound. It was a collective scar. So if you're listening right now, and you've ever felt invisible, know this. You're part of something bigger. Your silence isn't empty. It's shared. Your story isn't small, it's connected. And when one of us steps into the frame, we all do. I kept a box under my bed for years, an old shoebox scuffed at the corners, filled with folded sheets of paper, letters I'd written late at night, when the kitchen finally went quiet, when the smell of garlic and onions still clung to my clothes, when everyone else was asleep. Letters I never had the courage to send. Most of them were to my mom. Some were to my dad, though he never played much of a role in the kitchen battles. A few were to Madison, my sister. But the one letter that always sat on top, the one I read back the most, was addressed simply, "Dear Family." It started the same way every time. "I love you, but I'm tired." I wrote about the endless cycles. Thanksgiving after Thanksgiving, me on my feet from morning to midnight. Christmases where I wrapped gifts with flowers still on my hands. Birthdays where I blew out no candles because I was refilling drinks. I wrote about missing out on laughter, missing out on memories, missing out on being part of the story. And I wrote about the photographs. Always the photographs. Page after page of smiling faces and me, either cropped out, blurred in the background, or missing altogether. Sometimes, when I reread those words, I felt petty, ungrateful. After all, they did thank me. They called me the heart of the family. They bragged to neighbors about my cooking. Shouldn't that have been enough? But then I'd remember the ache in my legs, the lump in my throat, the way my name never appeared in the stories they told later. It was like I'd been erased in real time, and the letter would keep spilling out of me. One draft was angrier. I wrote, "Do you even see me? Or am I just your waitress who happens to share your last name?" Another was softer. "I don't want to disappear. I just want a seat next to you, a plate someone else fills." A laugh caught in the middle of the frame. Some nights, the words tumbled out like fire, other nights like ash. But no matter how I shaped them, the letter always ended the same way. "Please, let me exist with you, not just for you." I never handed it over. I'd fold it up, tuck it back in the box, slide the box under my bed. Maybe because I was afraid they'd laugh. Or worse, that they'd shrug and say, "That's just how families work." Silence felt safer than rejection. But here's the twist. The one I never saw coming. That letter, the one I never sent, somehow made its way into the world anyway. Not in the exact words, not on paper, but in my tears that night when I said no. In the shaky video I posted to TikTok. In every sentence I spoke to strangers who became community. It was like the letter had been waiting for me to stop folding it up and hiding it, waiting for me to choose courage over quiet. When the local paper called, asking for an interview, I thought about that letter again. All those words I'd locked away suddenly had a place to land. Not in my mother's lap, not in my sister's inbox, but in the open, where they couldn't be buried. And when I sat across from that reporter, heart pounding, palms sweaty, I realized I wasn't just reading my story anymore. I was reading the letter for everyone who'd ever written one and stuffed it in a drawer. You might be wondering, did I ever show it to my family? The honest answer, no. Not the actual pages, not the ink smeared by my tears. But after everything, the fights, the silence, the chaos, the viral storm, they know now. They've read it in my actions, in my refusal to shrink back. They've seen it in the way I push my chair up to the table and don't move, and in some ways that's better than any paper letter, because this time they can't fold it up and put it away. The letter I never sent taught me something. Sometimes silence is heavy, but sometimes it's also practice. Every unsent draft was me rehearsing the moment I'd finally say, "Enough." And when the time came, I didn't need an envelope. I just needed my voice. So maybe you've written one too. A message you've typed and erased. A note you've tucked in a drawer. A truth you've whispered only to yourself. If you have, hear me. That letter matters. Even if you never send it. even if you're not ready yet, because one day it might pour out of you in a way you never planned. And when it does, it will be unstoppable. I still keep the shoebox. I still look at those folded pages sometimes. But now, I don't see failure. I see proof. Proof that I always knew what I needed. Proof that my voice had been alive inside me all along, waiting for the right moment to break free. And maybe that's the real story. The letter I never sent was never really about them. It was about me, finally believing I deserved to be heard. So here I am, reading it aloud in the only way I know how. Through you, with you, for you. Because if my unsent words can help you find yours, then maybe none of those nights were wasted after all.